Hello everyone. So until about 2 years ago, I really never used eyeshadow palettes at all. And the reason for that is because I found that all of the eyeshadows on the market either really irritated my eyes or because they really were not very much fun to use. And so that really has changed over the past couple years. So there have been a number of companies that have created at least one or a few palettes that have worked well for me. So some of these companies have included Guerlain and Dior and Lancome and Pat McGrath and Lisa Eldridge and Natasha Denona and Makeup by Mario and Jane Iredale, and then finally Yves St Laurent. And I also have really liked the individual eyeshadows that are being sold by both Jones Road and by Mob Beauty. So while I really like a lot of these eyeshadows, I feel like I'm especially fond of the ones from YSL. So I have two of their little quads which were released last year. One is called Kasbah Spices, and then the other one is called Stora Dolls. And a lot of people have been talking about these palettes, and I haven't yet talked about them on this channel, but I have gotten a lot of use out of these palettes. And so I thought that it was time to do a little video talking about the two of these and then using each one in the context of a quick 5-minute makeup look. So first, a little bit of information about me. I'm 59 years old and I have dry and sensitive skin. And I have realized that there are some ingredients that always do irritate my skin, and that those are the same ingredients that many other people find to be irritating as well. So I just don't talk about any products that contain those ingredients on this channel. So earlier today I shot some footage of me putting on these eyeshadows in the context of two different makeup looks. So I thought that I would just go ahead and talk about the products, and then I will insert that footage into this video. So these YSL quads were released in the summer of 2023, and there are 7 quads that are listed on the YSL site, and then 4 of those are available on the Sephora site. So the one that is the most popular, at least at the moment, is called Stora Dolls. So 3 of these shades are just slightly shimmery. You probably can't see it too well on the camera, but they are a little bit shimmery when I put them on, and then this one of course is quite shimmery. And these all tend to lean a little bit more cool, so they're more on the grayish, taupish side. And that seems to be another thing that's kind of coming into vogue in terms of eyeshadow palettes and eyeshadows in general. There are shades that are a little bit cooler than in the past. And I think that this one has worked really well for me, but the other one has been very nice too. So in the case of the Kasbah Spices, these 3 shades do seem to be fairly matte and without a lot of sparkle in them at all, and except for the one that's this one, which is much more sparkly. So there's one shade that's a darker brown that's more for an eyeliner, and then there are 2 shades that are middle sort of beige type colors. And this one is definitely warmer. The colors are more like caramel, and this brown color, it doesn't really look that red in the pan, but when I put it on my eyes, I do feel like I can see it being a little bit more reddish, especially if you compare that to my hair, which is more on the graying side. So I think that this is a palette that I think in the past I would have been most drawn to, but I feel like as I get older and as my hair color changes and as the style changes, I'm feeling really drawn toward the cooler colors as well. So it really depends a lot on what I'm wearing. There are certain things that I think that these colors go really, really well with. And the shimmer in this palette is much more of just a plain gold with just a tiny little bit of reddishness to it. And the matte colors here, they're more like true matte, so there really is not a lot of shimmer in these shades. But they are pretty soft, and so they are quite easy to apply, and I think that they look very pretty. So it looks to me like all of the quads in this line have 3 shadows that are more like mattes, and then there's one that's definitely very shimmery. And it seems that of these 7 quads, 6 of them are really fairly neutral. So they are either warm-leaning browns and beiges or more cool-leaning, or some of them are a little bit rosy, but that they're all things that really are not going to give a lot of color, except for the one shadow that is much more blue, and that one I think is very interesting. It is currently out of stock on the YSL site, but I think that that one could be a lot of fun. I feel like I totally missed the blue eyeshadow eras in the past. I was just a little too young for that when I was growing up, and by the time I started wearing makeup in the late 1970s, blue eyeshadow was way in the past, and then I think I was too busy getting my PhD to pay attention to eyeshadows when it briefly came around in the 1990s, but I'm kind of becoming more interested in blue eyeshadow, and so I might pick up that palette or at least something else that's a blue color in the coming months. That's supposed to be coming in style right now. Now, I do think that that blue eyeshadow palette, that one looks like it's one that I probably would use in conjunction with some other eyeshadows, so that I might start off by putting down some eye crayon, something like that, in a kind of a taupey type of a color, and then just use the blues on top of it. I think if I used all 4 of those blue shades and nothing else, that would be an awfully lot of blue. And I think if people really like pink eyeshadows, that some of these other colors might be nice. I think that probably all of these would work equally well. I think that whoever put these together has a really good eye for color and what is usable and will look nice on a variety of people in a way that's not too ostentatious, but that still will be really pretty. So the main issue that I had with these quads is that for this Stora Dolls one, this insert was not really glued into this case, and so it fell on the floor, and then this particular eyeshadow fell out, and I kind of pressed it back in there. So I really probably should send this back and get a different one, but it has worked in a way that's functional, and I kind of hate to waste things. But I think that that is something that I've heard from a number of people, is that they don't seem to be glued in there very well. So that is something that I would advise being careful about and having a glue on hand, or at least double-sided tape. Now, I do think that other than that, the case is very nice. It has this faux leather on it, but it's supposed to look like I guess a YSL handbag, and I think it's very pretty, and I think it's a reasonable size. It does come in this slot down here with 2 brushes that you can use on the go. So one of them is an actual little brush, and then one of them has a sponge tip on either end. So I think that this sponge tip, conceivably, you might even be able to use it as an eyeliner brush or an eyeliner applicator. I guess that there's a lot of these companies that have higher end eyeshadows that are making these little applicators to put in them. I have tried this a few times with various products. I don't feel like they're all that good. They certainly are not nearly as good as using one of my brushes. Now, I kind of don't think that I would use an eyeshadow quad like this away from home, because I think that I would be too worried that the shadows would break. So I am much more inclined to use something like an eyeshadow stick or some kind of a cream eyeshadow if I want to be putting on eyeshadow when I'm not at home. So I'm not sure I would ever do that, but I think that that is kind of a trend, and these certainly work better than the eyeshadow applicators that used to be in eyeshadow palettes. So now let's talk about all of the makeup that I'm putting on in this quick 5 or 10 minute makeup look. I started out with the Bobbi Brown corrector stick, and that is in light bisque, and so I just put that on right under my eyes, and I actually really like this stick. In a way, I like it even more than the Jones Road corrector sticks, because it does go on so easily. I don't feel like I need to put on eye cream, and I can put it on really fast and kind of blend it in with my fingers. And then in terms of my brows, when I want to do something that's fast and to save some time, I will almost always use the Jones Road brow pencil, and this one goes on really fast, and I think it looks plausible in terms of it being natural looking, and I don't feel like I need to use a brow gel over it the way that I do with most other kinds of brow pencils. And then I also have my Tom Ford concealer stick, and this one is another product that's a little bit pricey. I think it was $60, and but it does go on my skin really smoothly. I don't feel like I really need to powder over it. I think that it is a really good color for me, the one that I chose, and I think that it really blends into my skin really, really easily. I think the Merit is fairly similar, but I don't feel like there's quite as good of a color in the Merit as in this Tom Ford. So I've really used this Tom Ford stick pretty frequently, and yet I haven't used it all up yet, so I think that it's a better value than it seems in terms of the amount of use that I've gotten from it. And then I do have very dry eyelids, and there is some discoloration on them. So I do feel that I need something on my eyelids to serve as a primer. Otherwise, the eyeshadows tend not to stick to my eyelids very well. And in addition, I really like to have something that has a little bit of a tint to it so that I can cover over all the discoloration that's already there. So in this case, I am using a concealer that you put on with the doe foot. So this kind of concealer tends not to work all that well under my eyes. It tends to emphasize wrinkles, but in terms of using it on my eyelids, I think this has worked really well for me. And I do like this one from Haus Labs. I think this one from Haus Labs is a little bit more sort of tacky feeling, and so it kind of has a little bit of grippiness to it that I think has actually worked well with pretty much all the powder eyeshadows that I have used. And then in applying eyeshadows, and especially eyeshadows that are powder form in a quad like this, I have tried to figure out what most people do, especially for hooded eyes or for more aging eyes. And what I have started to do based on the instructions that I have read or that people have given me is that I will put one color all over the movable part of my eyelids, and then I will go up a little bit higher than the eyelids so that it looks like you can still see some color even when my eyes are open. And I think that seems to be consistently what people suggest with regard to hooded eyelids, that you want to bring up the color a little bit so the hooded part of the eye doesn't look so overwhelming to your eyes in general. And I think that's worked well for me. And then the other thing that people tend to suggest is putting a little bit of darker color on the outside of the eyes, on the outer third of the eyes. And so I do put a second color on that part of the eyes, and then use a dark color, such as one of those dark browns, more as an eyeliner, and try to get that way into my eyelashes so that it looks like my lashes are sort of blending into the eyeliner part. And then usually I'll put a little bit of shimmer over the entire look. And so what I have found is that most eye quads do provide the kinds of colors that allow me to do that fairly easily. So that's kind of what I'm looking for when I decide on an eye quad, is whether or not it has, usually I like to have two different colors that I could use as a base color, and then a dark color to use as an eyeliner, and then one color or maybe two colors to use as a shimmery sort of a shade. And I would say that all of these palettes from YSL, that they're really set up for that. So I think that's one of the reasons that I feel attracted to them, is that they all do seem to be workable as good palettes to create my own basic eye look. And then I'm also putting on some mascara, and in this case I am using my Westman Atelier I Want You mascara in the brown shade, and I really, really like this mascara. I have used it really more than any other mascara that I have tried in a long time in terms of really liking it. And I think it goes on really easily. I think it looks really natural. It wears really well. It isn't something that I have to worry about it smudging or flaking off, even if I'm outside exercising in the wind and the snow, but it's also super gentle and it looks really natural, and I kind of feel like I don't really look like I'm wearing mascara. I just feel like they're my natural lashes, but much, much better. So to finish off the look, I of course put on some blush, and for this particular particular look, I got out my Westman Atelier blush sticks. I mostly use the ones that are more muted. So Mimi is a very muted, sort of a rose color, but really much more grayish than most blush. And I also like Chouchette, which is sort of a muted peach color. And then I also like highlighter products that are more on the wet side. And I think that the Westman Atelier sticks, the lit up sticks, that those have worked well for me. And this one that I used in one of these looks here is in the color Brûlée, which is a little bit of a bronzy type color that I find to be very attractive. And then in terms of lipsticks, I have pulled out a couple of Lisa Eldridge lipsticks that I really like. So there's one that's a velvet matte lipstick, and that one is the Velvet Muse, which is one of her really popular shades in that velvet line. And then I'm also using one that is in the Luxuriously Lucid line, and that one is a little bit on the brownish color, and I think that that one went pretty well with the taupe eyeshadow, the Stora Dolls one. So I'll put on a little bit more of that now. So I do have very, very sensitive eyes, and so that is another one of the reasons that I always wear some kind of a base, either a concealer or a primer or something on my eyes, so that my eyes will be protected from anything in the shadows that might be problematic. But in the case of these YSL shadows, I have not found them to be irritating at all. And when I look at the ingredient list, I think that they have a much cleaner ingredient list than really any of the other eyeshadows that I have seen, including most of the ones that claim to be clean beauty. So these do not have any talc in them. They don't have any aluminum powder in them, obviously. They don't have anything like Teflon or black #2, but they actually don't have any synthetic colors in them at all. And they also don't have any preservatives that I consider to be problematic. So there are a lot of eyeshadows out there that don't have parabens, but that are using things like chlorphenicin or phenoxyethanol. And those are not as irritating as some preservatives, but I think that especially when I'm using them on my eyelids, that they may be slightly irritating. And some people do know that they are very irritated by those kinds of preservatives. But in this case, I think that the ingredient list looks really great to me. And I also kind of appreciate the fact that it has coffee seed oil and almond oil in it. I think that those may be contributing to the fact that these are performing so well for me and going on so nicely and easily. I think it also could be the case that the coffee seed oil might be serving to be a little bit depuffing because it might have a little bit of caffeine in it. But regardless, I do feel like this product feels really good on my eyes and that it's performing really, really well. And the one that I bought first, which was the Kasbah Spices, I bought that soon after the palette was released. And so it's been over 6 months, and I don't feel like the texture has changed at all. I think it has remained really nice and really easy to use and just as pretty. And so I have some hope that this is not going to be a palette that is going to dry up really soon. They do have a 24-month usage life, so I think compared to a lot of the other eyeshadow palettes that are out there, that's a pretty long life. And even though Yves St Laurent is a French brand, this is made in Italy, and I think that most of the really good eyeshadows that I have seen recently are coming from Italy. I think that whatever that factory in Italy is doing, they have really gotten a handle on how to make a good eyeshadow palette without any talc in it. So these are pretty expensive eye quads, and I think that it would be easy to say, well, I could get a whole palette for that price, and maybe it's not really worth it. And that's possible. And I think the palette that everybody is thinking about buying or talking about right now is this I Need a Nude palette. So I thought I would show you this palette in comparison to these two YSL products, because I do think that they're leaning in the same sort of direction in terms of the looks that you might be able to create from them. So here is what the I Need a Nude palette looks like. And then if I hold this up, this is what it looks like in comparison to the Kasbah Spices one. So I think some of these colors are a little bit the same, but I think that the I Need a Nude one is really leaning quite a bit more cool. And then if we compare the I Need a Nude palette to the Stora Dolls palette, I think that in terms of the general look that you might create, that this is a more similar in terms of the sorts of colors and the fact that they are leaning towards having a lot of grays and taupes and slight purple, but not too much in it. Now, in terms of whether or not you would actually want to buy this Natasha Denona one thing that really kept me from buying it for quite a while is that there are 3 shades in here that include aluminum powder, and those are the top 3 shimmer shades on the top row. So I have found that products that contain aluminum powder always do irritate my eyes, so I am just not using those shades for the time being. And those shades are Ella, Whisper, and Travertine. And then in addition, the Natasha Denona one does include talc in some of the shades. I think the talc is mostly an issue because it could be contaminated with asbestos. And so if you breathe in the asbestos, then you might eventually get some kind of a lung disease, conceivably. Now, I think that in this case, this palette has had very little fallout, and so I don't think I'm going to be breathing in very much of this eyeshadow, especially since I'm not planning to use it that often. And so I'm not real concerned about that, and I haven't found that any of the colors have irritated my eyes, although I haven't used those ones with the aluminum powder. But I still think that I have been getting more use out of the YSL Quad than I have this Natasha Denona palette. And I think that the reason for that is because it just seems always like a big deal for me to get out a big palette like that and then to figure out how to use it. And it's also quite large, and so it's something that I really need to find a place or to carry it around with me. And usually I end up just putting it away and then forgetting to get it out. And I do think that the Natasha Denona palette has performed really well in terms of it going on easily and looking pretty. And I really haven't made any looks that I didn't like. I think it's kind of hard to mess up with that collection of colors. But I think that the YSL ones have performed quite well also. Now, almost always when I find a product from a company that I really like, then I will look through the ingredient list for everything that they offer and see if there's anything else that I would like to try. And in the case of YSL, it does sound like they make some quality products, particularly in terms of lipsticks and other lip products. But unfortunately, pretty much everything that they offer has fragrance in it. And so that makes it a no-go for me. There is one product that I'm a little bit interested in, and that is their Lash Splash mascara. And that actually won an award last year from Allure in the Clean Beauty category for Best Mascara. So I am kind of interested in that one, especially since they offer brown mascaras, and I do tend to be a fan of brown mascaras. So if you have tried that mascara and if you have sensitive eyes, then I would be really interested in hearing what you think of it. I probably will pick it up, but I'd still like to hear from some people in terms of whether or not it worked for them or whether or not they found it irritating. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if there are any eyeshadow palettes that you really like, that you think that I should try or that other people might be considering trying, then I hope you will share that information in the comments section. In addition, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, then I hope you will go ahead and do that. And Coco and I love you very much, so thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Thank you, Coco.